welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. We're really excited, maybe even a little intimidated, because we have, as we call them here in my community, a big head, a pediatric and adult neurosurgeon, Dr. Daniel Donoho, coming to us and going to be talking with Wendy and I about something really important, and that's the intersection of tech and nonprofits. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Julia.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to meet you all.
Well, we're really excited. As Wendy said in the green room, she and I both need some more initials and letters by our name in order to be having this conversation. So, but we're going to muddle through and we're going to get through this in a way so that we can really link up what the concepts are here. Another thing we like to link up with is our say that fast 3 times, presenting sponsors, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday, our new Friday episode all about fundraising in the nonprofit sector, and Your Part-Time Controller. Again, I'm Julia Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, joined today by Wendy F. Adams, CFRE. Wow, Wendy, one of my favorites. You've been gone for a month or so, but you're back in the saddle. We're really excited to have you with us, my friend.
It's a pleasure. Happy times.
Happy times is right. All right, let's get back to Dr. Daniel Donoho and talk to us about where you're from and what type of work you do.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here with everyone. We're based in Washington, D.C., but have offices all over, actually. I work at Children's Hospital here in D.C., and the primary role that I have there is as a pediatric neurosurgeon. But for the purposes of today's conversation, we're going to be speaking more about the nonprofit world. So the Surgical Data Science Collective, or surgicalvideo.io, is our nonprofit organization that brings surgeons and technology together to improve patient care worldwide.
Wow. So I've got to think first and foremost, the way you described this means that this information had not really been available or centralized before this. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so one of the things that we try to do is we try to really intensely understand what's happening during surgery. There are so many key moments of an operation, and it can be very difficult to find out what mattered or what went well or what went wrong. You might think about it like an analogy to sports, where athletes will often look at game tape after they play. And we wrote an editorial about this, just lamenting the fact that surgeons actually have great difficulty in getting that game tape, despite the fact that it can literally be life-saving for their upcoming patients. So we created an effort that is not based in any one particular institution, that can bring together surgeons and computer scientists and global health advocates and communities all around the world to benefit from this hard-earned knowledge that we think is so important for our patients and their families around the world.
Wow. Okay, 2 things here. I mean, fabulous. Love the concept. Really interesting. It's somewhat shocking that this hasn't really been a part of the process, because I can't think back to a time, and I loved your example of sports, where you didn't see even high school sports being filmed. And then we say, Monday morning, you review the tape. This is somewhat shocking. Why do you think it's been delayed?
It can be shocking. I think that in medicine, rightfully so, we're very sensitive about things like privacy and security and protecting our patients. And those are really critical. And as a result of that, sometimes we're slower to adopt practices or technologies that might be easier to promulgate in fields that don't have those concerns. I mean, if somebody put a video of your kid hitting a tennis ball or shooting hoops on the internet, you might not like it, but it's probably not as sensitive as, for example, if you could tell that you were having surgery. So we're very, very protective of a lot of this information. That being said, we know how powerful that it can be, and particularly in this age of increasing computational techniques, algorithms, and software that can make sense of visual data, it's really imperative that we start to find sensitive, privacy preserving, secure ways of understanding these critical events in our lives.
Wow. Okay, super interesting and somewhat shocking, but understanding next how
Yeah.
we factor into this. Wendy, go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking 4 minutes in and I'm already mind blown. We haven't talked about the real first question. Wow. Yeah. So that does lead into, so how does a medical tech startup connect with nonprofit, and why? Like
And
how and why did we get here?
I think that's exactly the point, that because we're so concerned with doing the right thing, being focused on our mission, but to be honest, with foregoing some market facing opportunities that we could seek in exchange for being able to do good, that to me is almost the essence of a nonprofit. And I think we actually get a lot of strength from that identity if we can work in this space. The strength that we get is around overcoming some of those limitations about trust and privacy and security, and being good stewards and good custodians, because it's easy for people to know that we are who we say we are, and we're going to do the things in the best way possible that they can be done. So that's sort of the connection between technology and the nonprofit identity. And I think that's, for our team, that's why they get up in the morning, is they know that what they do on a daily basis will help us make surgery for the next generation of patients and surgeons safer wherever they may be, whether they're in the United States or whether they're in another country.
It's really fascinating. It seems to me even more intriguing that you have had to observe this, quantify it, and then activate it yourself, and that this is not something that's coming down from one of your professional designation or organizations, right? So it's a really exciting thing to me to hear that you and your team have observed this and then created something that you're going to release back into that profession. So I commend you for that, because that's not an easy thing. And I kind of want to take that into this next question, if you will, because a lot of times when we have medical advancements, we have silos, and we certainly have silos that are concrete filled in the nonprofit sector. For all the kumbaya, we don't always like to share. So
Why are you
how
telling
do
all
you,
our secrets, Julia?
I know. So how do you see this, Dr. Donoho? How do you feel like you and your team can navigate this?
Yeah, it's really actually it's one of our most important competencies. So one of the ways that we work is we work with other nonprofits. So, for example, there are organizations that are doing surgical training on the ground in countries all around the world, but they don't fundamentally have the capacity, the know-how, the focus to develop technology. And on the other hand, we we do rely on them for that expertise of what will work in a given country, a given city, for a given surgeon, et cetera. So we're a very intensely collaborative organization that values this action at a collective level, at many people, many organizations coming together. I think that there are always sensitivities around sharing and connecting between nonprofit organizations, and that's, I think, healthy, right? Fundraising is a challenge for everybody in this space, and that is typically where you see those tensions come out. But I think we're different enough that we're sort of in some ways fishing in a slightly different pond and speaking a slightly different language to other nonprofits that we work with, and we're hopefully also enabling them, emboldening them, encouraging them to have greater success and to set their sights a little bit higher by using some of the technology that we develop compared to what they could do with conventional methods.
So then that leads me to this question. we have to do so much training in the nonprofit sector, especially on the human side, where let's say we're dealing with children or we're dealing with trauma or we're dealing with shelter services. Do you ever see a time when maybe your technology, your protocols, and your processes might lend itself to other types of training that you've learned in your collective?
Absolutely. I think that, we're laser focused in this organization on what we do.
Sure.
But the technology that we are working with doesn't fundamentally at a basic level care what kind of visual data we're looking at, what kind of tabular data that we're looking at, what kinds of images you're putting into it. It is very important because there are so many details about every single domain that we get artificial intelligence models, machine learning models, computer vision models working as well as possible in that real world. So it's not like we would just take this exact thing and use it somewhere else. We know predictably, and we've proven that doesn't work. But the systems, the frameworks, and the way that we operate could be used to train many people doing many different things. And more importantly, to actually follow them throughout their actual practices. It's one thing to do a training event. We all know this. But it's quite difficult to actually then learn and say, oh, I did this training 3 months ago, and here was my performance today, and here's what I could have done, or here's an inspiring example from a colleague. Those kinds of insights are so hard to come by, and that's, I think, where we excel.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I'm blown away
Yeah.
with the fact of how you're making the connection. It's all back to people, the practitioners, the patients, like everything is funneling back into that space. That takes that silo and crushes it. I love it.
Yeah, I think so. It seems like we're a technology company, and we talk a lot like we're a technology company. But again, and this goes back to why the heck are we a nonprofit, right? I think it's because ultimately this is an organization that is trying to create a social change, right, through technology to improve human health by changing practices. And that sort of community approach and buy-in and working, through the conditions that we really experience every day, both in our work environments and in the global health environment, that reality is really critical. And I think that's why we are who we are.
It's fascinating. I think about my own trajectory in life, and I would imagine that most people would agree that you learn a lot more from failure than you do success. So how do you mitigate something that goes wrong in the OR, or if we take and extrapolate this out, something that goes wrong in some sort of treatment environment, and turn it into something that is less litigious and something that it is I don't want to say is lacking shame, but that we can quote unquote learn from. Do you see what I'm saying? Where I'm going with that? Because I've got to believe, to your point, about patient privacy, there's got to be the practitioner's privacy as well. Is their fear of being monitored or examined for something that might be problematic? How do you navigate that arc?
Yeah, I think there are always those sensitivities, and we think a lot about what it feels like to participate in this. And a lot of this work actually started from simulation training that we were doing for a particular really, really challenging and difficult moment in the operating room where a surgeon might have a very serious injury to a blood vessel that more often than not that they've caused. And that's a very difficult moment. But when we can do that in simulation with psychological safety, with training, with coaching, all of a sudden we would actually see in the hundreds of surgeons that we trained in this, we'd see them smiling. We would see them talking openly about, oh, that didn't work, or this didn't work, or try this technique next time. And that was sort of the kernel of, you can have difficult moments, but if you have the right structure around it so that you can actually deal with it as a community, as a group, and that there isn't necessarily that sense of shame around it, that's how we're going to get better, because the shameful mistakes, those are the ones that are the really hard ones when we're alone. This kind of action actually can bring surgeons together around their performances. And I want to say, one last thing, which is to start from your comment, which is it's easier to learn from failure than success. I think that's true, but I also wonder if that might be the problem, because as we're learning a technique, you actually, as a learner, you don't want to think about what could go wrong. You want to have that
Yeah.
perfect image of exactly
Confidence.
the best way to do it. And
Yeah.
and that insight, if you've not, imagining how good a procedure could be or how well you could do something, right? That's really the critical thing. And that's one of the things that I'm most excited about with what we do, is to find these excellent examples of surgery from all around the world and bring them to surgeons so they might imagine, hey, we could do this a little bit better, or so and so did this and now I see how they did it, and I get it, and I can track it, and I can track my own progress, and I'm getting closer to them, and then I'm setting the standard myself. Those moments, I think, to me, are the most precious ones, where you raise people's ability, and that's what I hope we can achieve in this.
I love that. I also love the shift of mindset in that. I think that's like a
It,
huge thing.
it is. It is the definition of better together. Like we say it, but that's how that walks out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, really interesting. Let's move on to another aspect, and that is, how do you share knowledge in
Mm.
such a competitive environment? Again, it factors into the human condition, hubris, it's economics. I mean, it's a heavy lift for a lot of folks, and the nonprofit sector is not immune to this.
No.
What are you seeing, and what can you share with us in terms of how we might kind of sidestep this problem?
Yeah, I think in a lot of our interactions, actually, we're a services provider, right? So that sense of how do you collaborate is really baked into this organization, right? If you're training surgeons in some technique in urology or obstetrics or general surgery, whatever it may be, and you want to scale that up, we're the folks that can help you do that. And that's I think where we excel. And similarly, we provide a lot of value back to surgeons and to researchers who, may have the data, right? But I love this analogy. People say that data is the new oil. I love that, because I don't think anyone who says that, they've probably never actually seen an oil well or understood what that actually means. Like, it's really far underground. It comes out under crazy pressure and you have to manage it. You can't sell it yourself, right? You need a whole organization. You need to have, factories and refineries. It needs to
Yeah.
go into something, right? You need a car to drive or a truck or something, right? So when you unpack that a little bit more, I love it. Maybe not for the reasons that everyone else does. So I think we're a critical part of how the value creation ecosystem around medical data, right? That's what the data holder actually needs. They actually don't have the ability to even understand what they hold and its value. And we actually help them create that, understand that, and appreciate that. And, if that's a value exchange that they're interested in, right, that's something that, we can help them understand better. So I think that if we can, and when we can operate in these non-zero sums where we're encouraging and enabling and helping other organizations, when we're helping them achieve their mission success, when we're helping them see the value in their data and realize that value, both for their internal operations, external operations, and for other reasons as well. That's, I think, our way out of this, otherwise really sticky situation where, yes, people are clutching onto this thing so tightly that they'll never even show it to the world and understand what it could be.
Right. Right. I mean, Wendy, don't you agree that that's like one of the big stumbling blocks that we have across the nonprofit sector, where we are collecting data and then ultimately trying to decide how to use it?
Yes, and then not moving forward with it, right? Because we're holding on so tightly, we're not having the conversations. We have blind spots in that space. Oh yeah. I love Dr. Donoho, I love your explanation of the oil, right?
Yeah.
Because in the midst of that, it's also messy, right?
Yeah.
So why, yeah, no, I think that's great.
Super
Yeah.
messy. Really, really interesting. Let's talk about the next part of this process. And, the oil is forever going to stick in my mind, because you go
Yeah.
from crude to refinement, and that's harnessing that product, the data, and then communicating it. what are you seeing, and how is this something that is going to make this all easier and actually more useful?
Yeah, I think communicating data is one of the most important things that we do. We think about this every day, and it's certainly something we're growing and learning in. How do you communicate performance data? How do
Mhm.
you communicate procedural data? How do you turn a 3 hour, 5 hour, 1 hour video of a surgery into something that somebody actually has time to understand,
Mm.
into something that makes even a near expert or expert better? We think about that a lot. And I think that visual communication is so critical for time starved folks, especially in the medical field and many fields. We just don't have time to make sense even of all of the data that we possess.
Yeah.
And I think finding ways that we can bring that data into our practice is really critical. So I think and then I think also, we think about scientific communication a lot. So we're helping folks win, national level grants and publish
Hmm.
academic papers and publish lay articles as well in the media and in internet formats as well. Doing this podcast, right? How do we communicate with people at every level so that we can maintain that trust and that security throughout folks who have a medical background, or even if they don't, so that when they hear, hey, my surgeon is getting statistics, right, they say, oh, okay, yeah, that's someone who really cares about their performance, right? That's somebody who's really, they're the best. They want to make sure they're the best. They want to understand everything about what they're doing, not, oh, they're being monitored, right? Why do they have an ankle monitor on, right? Like, what are we talking about here, right? So all of this has to be, thoughtfully and carefully and accurately represented very publicly and very transparently as far as what we do and how we do it.
Mhm. Wendy, I'm thinking of you, and specifically within the
Mm.
trajectory of your career, needing and using data with donors to explain to them why their financial investment moves the needle.
Absolutely. And I just keep hearing two things because that builds clarity for them, right? Like they're gonna, oh, this is how that works and why, and confidence. And that now they're sharing, they're sharing with others. But that's what I keep hearing in as Doc is explaining this, is there's a lot of confidence that's built
Mhm.
through having these conversations and having this opportunity. So I see how it translates, and I'm seeing the bridge between tech in this conversation and
Mhm.
nonprofit so much more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. And I think that when you can communicate with donors and show them that what they've invested in is not just had a one-time impact, but has had an ongoing
Yes,
impact, a scaling impact, right?
sustainable. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hopefully, those are the things that I think really motivate folks.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's going to be, how long have you been working on this project?
Yeah, so we've been in existence about a little over 2 years at this point,
Uh-huh.
and most of our active work really in the last 12 months.
Okay.
So we're pretty new, definitely new kid on the block.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you in the remaining moments we have to get out your crystal ball, shine it up. Where do you see things in the next 5 years? Like, how technology is changing so quickly, the way we're embracing, the way your product and your methodology is going to get communicated out, the economic factors, the human factors, all of these things. What are you kind of projecting?
Hmm.
Yeah, I think we're going to see real challenges and real opportunities in the technology and medical data space. I think we're going to see a lot more integration of what was formerly considered commercial grade or consumer grade technology into the medical enterprise, whether people like it or not. Things
Hmm.
like ChatGPT and other models, they're here. And they're starting to do things that we have to really understand and be careful about, to be honest. And we're going to start to see a much greater openness, in my opinion, around medical data, because for the first time, we're going to be able to do something with it that really can profoundly improve health. This is something that's been set out by the federal government. This is something that's been set out by commercial agents in the market. I think that the next 5 years of data really looks like a lot greater openness, a lot greater exchange, and a lot greater opportunity Measured against that are the significant challenges of working in medical data. That will always remain. The legal and regulatory milieu will become more complicated and will require a little bit more expertise to navigate. Even as there's greater desire to share and transact around data, there's going to be increasing regulation in this space inevitably. And I think that consumers, patients, families, parents, they're going to become more savvy around data as well. And I think all of these things are healthy and they'll ultimately make our ecosystem stronger, but there'll be challenges that we have to manage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I loved what you just said, and that is, the whole ecosystem of who's using, who's navigating it. We all are going to have to be more present in what this looks like, and how it's effective, and how it's managed, right, and protected. It's a new discussion.
Yeah,
yeah, it definitely is. And as a layperson, and a patient, how is that? I'm curious. How is this initial space? You said it's only been a year. How are the patients as they're starting to hear about this coming along? What's that communication looking like? What's the feedback you're hearing? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's early, and I want to stress that from our standpoint, we're not providing a medical device or clinical decision support during surgery. So that's a very important bar that we don't cross that line. So I think that what we're able to do in terms of making medical knowledge more open and more accessible, it hasn't yet really translated out into the patient domain. But when we've asked, and when colleagues of ours have asked, generally and almost uniformly, patients are excited and positive about this, of saying, hey, you're going to make surgery safer. Hey, you're going to make my surgery better. Why, you're recording some images or video anyways, as long as you can protect my privacy and, my security and, those kinds of things. Why wouldn't I want that, video analyzed and studied to help make the next kid's surgery better? And we really do put that part first. So that's important to say. But once we've made sure that that's the case, I think that this data can be put to good use, and most parents and families really value that. And they're very excited to contribute to scientific understanding and to advancing the field, and we're very grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about the trajectory of medicine and advancement, a lot has happened in the last 100 years that is just astonishing. And if we don't share that knowledge, and if we're not open to that community of knowledge transference, it doesn't go anywhere, right? It lives and dies with that professional, as opposed to becoming more multi-generational and even living outside of our own regions. Really interesting conversation. I've so enjoyed this. It's going to be fascinating, Dr. Donoho, to see what you learn and how you grow this organization. Again, Dr. Daniel Donoho, pediatric and adult neurosurgeon and the founder of Surgical Data Science Collective. Check out their website, surgicalvideo.io, and you can learn more about their work and how they're evolving this really, really fascinating trajectory that ultimately the nonprofit sector serving these topics is really going to want to embrace, because it's going to help us further our own causes. And I'm thinking about fundraising off the top. How do we fundraise, and how much stronger we can be in this sector when we understand, when we have metrics, when we have data. It's really a powerful thing. And of course, the performance and the issue of building stronger surgical teams is obvious. But I mean, just as we move beyond that, Wendy, it's really an exciting opportunity for us.
It truly is. It truly is. And to have these kind of conversations only opens up more dialogue for all of us to be able to speak into and to be educated. That's what we're doing here today. So thank you so much, Dr. Donoho. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me on, and very excited to share this with your audience and continue the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be really interesting to watch you and to see what you all do and how your collective grows. And I would imagine you've got this like steep challenge to just communicate what it is you're doing. But then once we in the sector understand what's going on, it will become just a pro forma kind of thing that we will expect this type of approach, and then we'll expect to be using this data and this knowledge. And so bravo to you and your team. Again, bravo to the folks that support us, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday, our new episodes on Friday dedicated to fundraising, and Your Part-Time Controller. These are the folks that are with us day in and day out as we navigate now almost 1,200 episodes and in our 5th year of broadcasting. Wow, I'm really energized. This is for me a great way to start a Monday. I love this conversation, and I want to say thank you so much to both of you for being on this journey with us. As we end each and every episode, this saying, Dr. Goes, we say this every day. We have since day one, and today it really means something to me because when we started saying this, it was the dawn of the pandemic, and it meant something different. The saying is this way, the mantra, I guess, is to stay well so you can do well. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again.